Chapter 1. The first thing I smelled that morning was bleach. It was still dark outside. January in the United States. The kind of cold that turns your fingers stiff, even before you touch the water. I stood in a small kitchen that wasn't mine, holding a sponge, watching a muted TV balanced on a shelf. The news banner kept looping, the same words reshuffled, like they were trying to make them easier to believe. They were saying Nicolás Maduro had been captured. I didn't move for a long time. The sink ran. The water steamed a little, then cooled. My hand stayed in the rubber gloves, but I forgot what I was doing. In my pocket, my phone vibrated with messages. Voice notes from my mother, cousins I hadn't seen in years, people writing the same sentence with different spellings. Like if they typed it wrong, it might stay unreal. If this is true, then what now? I looked at my reflection in the microwave door, older than the girl who arrived here with a tourist visa and too much pride. My hair tied up, cheeks tired, a tiny crack on one knuckle from winter air and too much soap. For 8 years, Venezuela has been a place I carried like a bruise you don't show strangers. And now, suddenly, it felt like the bruise was being touched. I found myself thinking about returning before I even said the thought out loud, returning like it was a simple direction, like there was still a doorway where my old life used to be. But before I can continue, I need to go back to Venezuela and show who I really am.
This is Searching for Home Stories. If these stories matter to you, leave a like and subscribe. We share real human journeys from around the world, stories that help us understand life through the eyes of those searching for home. Now, let's return to our story.
Chapter 2. I grew up in a Venezuela that had music in the streets even when the lights went out. That's what people don't understand. They imagine only chaos, only shouting, only empty shelves. But my childhood had other sounds too. The scraping of plastic chairs on a hot patio, my father's radio playing too loud, my mother frying arepas early in the morning, while the neighborhood dogs barked at nothing. We weren't rich. We weren't even close. But there was a rhythm to life that made you feel held by it. Then, slowly, that rhythm started breaking. It wasn't one big moment. It was small humiliations piling up. Standing in line for hours and watching the person in front of you buy the last bag of flour. My mother cutting a tomato into thin slices, like it could become more food if she was careful enough. The feeling of counting money that became less and less money each week, like it was melting. Blackouts became normal. You learn the shape of your house in the dark. You learn to shower fast because you don't know when the water will stop. You learn to sleep through the sound of motorcycles and rumors. And you learn what it feels like when politics stops being something adults talk about on TV and becomes something that crawls into your kitchen. People spoke about Nicolás Maduro the way you talk about weather you can't control. With anger, with sarcasm, with fear. His face was everywhere. Posters, screens, speeches that went on and on. While the reality around us got thinner, more fragile. I remember a day my father came home quiet. He worked with his hands. He always had oil under his nails. That day, he washed his hands twice and still looked dirty, like the world wouldn't come off. "They're closing another place," he said. "People are leaving." Leaving. It became the word that hovered in every conversation. A cousin left. A friend left. The girl who used to sit next to me in school left and sent photos from another country where the supermarkets looked like museums. Aisles full, bright, indifferent. At night, my parents tried to be calm for me. But I heard them. I heard the silence between them when they thought I was asleep. The kind of silence that means, we don't know how to protect her anymore. I was 23 when I started to understand that staying was also a decision. And it was a decision that was costing us pieces of ourselves. Chapter 3. I didn't leave because I was brave. I left because I was tired of feeling my life shrinking. The tourist visa felt like a thin piece of paper pretending to be a fork. Plan. I remember holding my passport in my hands and feeling both relief and shame. Relief because it was a door. Shame because my parents couldn't walk through it with me. My mother packed my suitcase like she was trying to pack her love into it. 2 jeans, a sweater that still smelled like our detergent, a small rosary, and a photo of us at a birthday party. My father behind us, smiling too wide like he was trying to tell the camera everything would be fine. At the airport, my parents didn't cry the way you expect in movies. My father hugged me like he was holding something that could break. My mother touched my face with both hands, and her fingers were cold. "Call me when you land," she said, like landing was the main danger. I nodded like I knew what I was doing. Inside, I felt like I was walking away from my own name. On the plane, I watched clouds through the window and tried to picture the United States. I had seen it in movies. Big roads, clean houses, people who didn't look at prices when they bought food. But in my chest, there was a different picture. My parents in our kitchen, lights flickering, pretending to eat slowly so they wouldn't feel how little was on the plate. When the wheels touched the ground and the plane shuddered into stillness, I felt something sharp behind my ribs. I had arrived, and I was alone. Chapter 4. The first week in the United States, everything sounded too fast. English wasn't just a language, it was a wall. People smiled, asked questions, kept walking. I smiled back, even when I didn't understand. My cheeks hurt from pretending. The air felt different too. Cleaner, colder, almost empty of the heavy tropical smell I grew up with. At night, instead of crickets and distant voices, I heard refrigerators humming and cars passing like quiet waves. I stayed where I could. I slept on couches. I learned how to fold myself into small spaces and say thank you like it could pay rent. And then, when the tourist time started ticking louder in my head, reality came in. I needed money. Back home, my parents were still there, still waiting in lines, still stretching meals, still telling me on video calls that everything was fine, in the same way a person says they're fine when their eyes are not. So I started cleaning. At first, it was one house. A woman handed me a list like it was a grocery receipt. Bathroom, kitchen, floors. She talked about it like dirt was a moral failure, and I was there to erase it. The smell of cleaning products became my new perfume. My hands stayed raw. My back learned a new kind of pain. The slow pain of bending and scrubbing and carrying buckets upstairs. Sometimes the houses were so quiet they made me uncomfortable. Family photos on the walls. Children's shoes by the door. A fruit bowl full like it was normal. And I would stand there, alone in someone else's calm, and feel a strange jealousy. Not of their money, exactly, but of their certainty. The certainty that they belonged here, that this was theirs, that they didn't have to prove their right to exist every day. On my breaks, I ate quickly. Rice, beans, whatever was cheap. I sent money home when I could. I counted every dollar twice before I spent it. At night, I called my mother. Sometimes she picked up. Sometimes the connection failed. Sometimes there was no electricity. And sometimes she answered and tried to sound cheerful. And I could hear the lie between her words. "I'm proud of you," she said once. I didn't know what to do with that sentence. It felt too heavy for my small room, too heavy for the life I was building out of exhaustion. Chapter 5. The turning point wasn't a miracle. It was a sound. My mother sent a voice note one afternoon. I was in the laundry room of an apartment building, folding towels that smelled like someone else's perfume. I put my headphones in, pressed play. In the background of her message, I heard shouting. Not my mother's voice, other voices. A commotion. Then a pause. Then my mother speaking quietly. Too quietly. Mi amor, there was a protest nearby, she said. Your father came back late. He's okay. But it's getting worse. Worse. I stood there holding a towel to my chest, like it could stop something inside me from collapsing. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and realized something I had been avoiding for years. I was not only working to survive here. I was running from a place where my survival felt like a gamble. And then guilt came right behind it. Because my parents were still there, because my leaving hadn't saved them, it had only changed the shape of my worry. After that, I started doing small things differently. Not big, not cinematic. Small. I stopped telling myself I would go back soon, as if soon was a guarantee. I started taking English seriously, even when my mouth felt clumsy around the words. I found a community center where people spoke Spanish in the hallway and didn't look at me like I was strange for missing a country that hurt me. I made friends with other immigrants. A woman from Honduras who laughed loudly even when she was tired. A guy from Colombia who carried his mother's number written on paper in his wallet in case something happens. We didn't talk about dreams. We talked about practical things. Work, rent, the fear you keep in your stomach, the way you learn to walk like you're not afraid. And slowly, the United States stopped being only a place I cleaned. It became a place where my life, this new version of my life, was happening, whether I felt ready or not. Chapter 6. Now it is January 2026. I am not 23 anymore. I am 31, and my face has learned new expressions. Less softness, more caution. My Spanish is still mine, but my English no longer feels like a costume. It feels like a second skin that sometimes itches. When the headlines started spreading, when people started saying Maduro had been captured, I didn't celebrate. I know what it is to want a villain you can point to. I know what it is to think, if this one thing changes, everything changes. But I also know, Venezuela is not a switch you flip. Still, I couldn't stop imagining my parents' street, the heat, the sound of the gate, my mother's hands on my face again, not through a screen, my father's hug without a time limit, the taste of coffee that isn't made in a hurry before work. I opened my closet that night and saw two worlds hanging side by side. My work clothes in neutral colors, worn at the elbows, and at the back, tucked away, a blouse I brought from Venezuela that I almost never wear because it carries too much memory in its fabric. I took out the old photo my mother packed. The edges are softer now, bent from being moved too many times. My parents look younger in it. So do I. We are smiling, like we didn't know what was coming. I asked myself the question I avoided for 8 years. If Venezuela changes, do I still fit inside it? Part of me wants to go back and pretend I can stitch time together. Part of me is afraid that I will arrive and feel like a visitor in my own birthplace. Afraid that the country I miss is not a place anymore, but a version of me that doesn't exist. I started making plans anyway. Quiet plans. I looked at flights. I checked my passport. I listened to my mother's voice notes twice, 3 times, hearing the new softness in her tone. Hope mixed with caution. And in the middle of all that, I felt something I didn't expect. Not happiness. A kind of permission, as if my home was never a single point on a map. As if I didn't leave it. I stretched it painfully across borders and years and phone screens and long nights of work. If I go back, it won't be to return to who I was. It will be to meet my country again and see what part of me it still recognizes. Chapter 7. She left Venezuela at 23, alone, carrying a tourist visa and a suitcase packed by her mother's hands. She spent 8 years cleaning other people's homes in the United States while trying not to lose the feeling of her own. Now, in January 2026, with unexpected headlines shaking old certainties, she's standing at the edge of a decision she thought she would never face again, to go back or to keep building a life between two worlds. If this story made you think of someone you love or of a place you miss, subscribe to Searching for Home Stories. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us, have you ever felt like home was somewhere you couldn't fully return to?
If this story moved you in any way, subscribe to Searching for Home Stories, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Every story matters, and every voice searching for home matters too.